Locho sampo pagyo trashepa tuche tempe trile yarngoda pelge drolor zampe zeparache palde alame shabla solvade Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumat Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Omo A Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Omo A Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Omo A Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Omo A Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Pakyuke Tudan Dagi Yerme Chikto Chingi Lo Makyuke Kudan Dagi Lo Makyuke Sundan Dagi Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Yerme Chikto Chingi Lo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamunye Swaha. Sashipu ki chushime tok Tamare Ravalingashin Nide Gempadi Sange Shintu Mikte Ulwarki Drokun Namdashin La Chopar Shoyidamang Guru Ratna Mindrala Kamniryatayami Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dage Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Shu Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dage Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Shu Sangye Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sangye Drupar Shu. Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Con la pratica della generosità e delle altre perfezioni, possa io ottenere lo stato di Buddha per il beneficio di tutti gli esseri senzienti. Namo Laike Da Ludan Jinke Drundanda Mike Namda Drowa Kuinge Dranamachi Tsampa Tamche Ketu Dagi Cheten. Buongiorno.
Good morning.
Noi abbiamo cominciato
We started
vedendo anche che
seeing
cosa
also
vuol dire
what does it
meditare,
mean to meditate,
partendo anche dalla
starting
etimologia
from
della
the
parola,
etymology of the word itself,
significato in
the
tibetano, che cosa si
meaning in
intende
Tibetan,
per
what do we
meditare.
mean by meditating.
Una delle cose che abbiamo visto
One
è
of the
che
things that we've seen is that
non si può
we
semplicemente
cannot
meditare,
simply meditate.
si deve meditare in
We
qualcosa,
have to meditate on
deve
something.
essere sempre un oggetto di meditazione.
There always needs to be an object of meditation, just in the same way that I cannot get used. I need to get used to something. Cannot.
Cosa stai facendo? Io mi sto
What are you doing? I'm getting used.
con che cosa, no?
What? To what?
Quindi
And so, similarly, when we talk about meditating, there always needs to be an object of meditation. So that means that I familiarize myself with something. And this partly is also connected with the fact that our own mind, in its nature, has always an object of perception. The definition that is given of mind is Salshinirikpa, that could be translated as something like clear and cognitive. It's clear because mind is always, how can we say, clear, is visible to itself. And it's cognitive since it always has an object of perception. So even when sometimes there is this idea that I should empty my mind, and one tries to think about nothing, nothing is something. Usually when we hear this idea of emptying the mind, it's not really emptying the mind completely, but mostly about stopping discursive thoughts. But that doesn't mean that there is no thought anymore, that the mind is completely empty. Sometimes this idea has been given of meditation as something like a sort of place where one simply gets into a state of total void, of no thought, remaining in this state of neutrality. And because of this, meditation sometimes is seen as a state to be reached rather than a tool of familiarization. And this is something that already in ancient Tibet there was this thing, and so Lama Tsongkhapa did a lot of debates about this. It's something that it's not of today. There was already this way of saying in Tibet that the excellent relaxation is the state of meditation. So when one is totally free from thoughts, free from tensions, this state of total relaxation that is even pleasurable, this is the real state of meditation. Then Lama Tsongkhapa explained, saying, no, this is a state of mental torpor. That it's also pleasant. But one stays in this state where there are no particular thoughts, where one is kind of dazed, and it's also pleasant for a long time. Then when he comes back from this state, it's not that he decreased attachment or ignorance, no, rather it's a bit like saying, could it happen that one feels very strong emotions, and then through the use of a substance is able to numb those feelings and remains kind of numb, like depending on what it takes and how much of it. And then he remains in that state. That can also be pleasant, remains kind of dazed, stunned, and then when the effect of that substance ends, has that emotion passed completely, or one is still remaining with that fear or jealousy or whatever? According to me, that comes back. Because if that wouldn't come back, then we should all get to drugs. By all means, to take some drug will allow us to manage, to untie, to remove our deepest knots and to defeat jealousy, fear, anger. Then I will be the first one to say, yeah, let's do it first. But also following what Lama Ganchen was saying, if drugs brought to spiritual evolution, then the world would be full of enlightened people. Me, personally, I believe that for as much as some substances can bring to some special experiences, once that has passed, anyway, you go back to your own things. So it's not a real solution. And the state of mental torpor somehow is something similar to that, where one doesn't take any external substance, but through an inner process gets into that state of a sort of pleasure, is kind of numb, anesthetized, and remains in that state. That, I repeat, by itself, and in itself there is nothing wrong, but it doesn't solve the mental defilements, it's not something that actually helps us in a process of inner growth and to face the causes of our suffering and so on. And so when we talk about meditation, as we mentioned yesterday, first of all, we can meditate on anything. There is nothing that cannot be an object of meditation. I can meditate on an object of anger, I can meditate on the taste of chocolate, I can meditate on whatever. It can also be a visual object, a mental object, a sound, a name, a smell. I can meditate on a tactile sensation or on anything. For example, I can also meditate on the breath. If we take one of the most evolved practices, actually, this called Mahamudra. In the practice of Mahamudra, one trains himself in the meditative process of the so-called abiding calmness that we will now explain, using as an object of meditation not the image of the Buddhas that we used yesterday, but one's own mind. And here is a very difficult process because already to be able to see one's own mind is not easy. So let alone to focus one pointedly on that. But this is to say that anything can be an object of meditation, from one's own mind to the neighbor to anything that one can think about. Think about anything that can be an object of meditation.
E qua ci sono due passaggi.
And here there are two steps. The first one is that when someone is learning how to meditate, then he should pick an object of meditation to train himself. And this object could be anything. Usually we tend to choose a virtuous object, because if I pick as an object of envy or anger, maybe it's easier than the face of Buddha because I'm more used to it, to that object. So I keep there that face of that person, and it's easier to visualize it at the beginning because I have more familiarity with it. But it's not something that comes to our favor. In general, however, the first step to meditate is to choose an object and to remain on that. Because in the first step, the goal is not to familiarize ourselves with the object, but to train mind to meditative concentration. Then, once that I've trained myself, at that point I can really play for real and choose the object that I need the most. It's like, okay, first playing with a flight simulator, and then I need to learn how to fly. Then when I've learned how to fly, then I can take the actual plane and go from one place to the other. And so, in this process, what I believe that yesterday some people commented with me, I believe that it happened to many people. I have been meditating for many years, but I realized that I never meditated. In the sense that what we usually call meditation very often is part of the preliminaries of meditation. That are very important and beautiful and wonderful. Nothing negative, wrong about that, in the sense that, of course, before being able to keep the mind still on an object, I calm the mind, I decrease the discursive part of mine. And the exercises that we did these days, up to today, is not meditation. We did the exercises on our breath as a preparation for meditation. Also because to try to meditate without having done correctly the preparation beforehand is almost an act of violence to oneself. Because we are not able to do that. So rightly, one first has to prepare oneself, and then after that he's ready. Because if I tell you to climb a mountain without having trained physically before, You start to the first 5 meters and then you say, I will never be able to do that. But if there is some training, then yes, the climbing will be difficult, but you can manage to do it. So similarly, we start over with a training in the preparation part. And I invite everyone to keep continuity to this, so the fact of being able to stay sitting and focusing on the breath, breathing in a correct way. We did some exercises of breathing, and I added also the Vajrasattva practice to purify our blocks, tensions, sense of guilt, and so on, related to the past. Then we can also add the part of request of blessings. However, this is something that we can all do right away, that is not difficult, and that by itself already brings a lot of benefits. Simply to do those 10-15 minutes of exercise on the breath, that is usually called meditation on breath, but I have doubts whether it's meditation on the breath rather than an exercise. Meditation on the breath is something else that we will also explain. But just to do that, to breathe correctly with the abdomen, then to do the so-called yogic breathing, so to breathe in first with the belly and then with the chest, and then to hold a bit and then emptying first the chest, then the belly, then holding again. These 4 phases breathing. If we are also able to then do the in-breath with 4, then hold with 8, out-breath with 8, and then to hold with 4, and to do this for 50 minutes, that brings huge benefits. It also helps to calm anxiety, for example. It helps to generate more mental clarity, more also physical strength. I remember it was like last year or something like that, when during the week of Dharma in Nature that we did every day this exercise, this breathing exercise for like 3-4 times a day, those 15-20 minutes. Around the end of that week we went for a walk on a path that I had already did other times, and I remember the previous times that I did that I was a bit struggling as I was climbing and I was out of breath. And then the day that I had been doing that exercise many times a day, more times than I do normally, I went through the whole walk as if I was just walking flat. I was never out of breath. Then at a certain point it seemed to me as if I was going too fast also for the others. But what I saw is that, wow, okay, how is it that before, okay, I was walking more in the previous period that I did that, and I had a harder time, and now it's easier. I had much more energy. And there are all the kind of technical explanations of the why and how this happens, but anyway, I just wanted to say that to do these exercises bring many benefits. And so if one says, I've been doing this for years and I thought that was meditating, and it's not, don't worry, it's just a matter of the label that you put, whether you call it exercise on breathing or meditation. Anyway, it's something that it's very good for us. But when we get into the meditation, meditation requires, first of all, we have the analytical meditation and then the one-pointed meditation. Both in one case and the other, meditation requires that the mind stays focused on one object, the object of meditation. If I do an analytical meditation, for example, on patience, I will have as a point of attention how much anger is harmful, how much patience is important. I will do a whole analysis around patience. It's not that as I'm doing the analysis of patience, I think about, I don't know, something like the news that I read or other things. So I try to keep my presence on what I'm doing. If I do a meditation that is one-pointed, I choose one object. That could be an inner state, could be an image, anything, and I try to place my mind on that, and my mind remains on that object. When we do this, our capacity of familiarity with the object increases a lot. It's a bit like as if we would take this book, for example. Can you see this book? Okay. Now, can you imagine the book? More or less, right? There isn't a mental image. If I now tell you, look, this book is the commentary of the self-feeling, the transcription of the teachings that were given in the Netherlands a few years ago. On the in front you have the image of Borobudur. It's more or less A5 format, a lot of pages. It's quite heavy. The cover is like a sort of orange, yellow with a Bordeaux line, and then you have the NgalSo logo. The title is The Highest of All Treasures, commentary on the Tantric NgalSo self-healing practice. Okay, now imagine the book. Is it more clear? What we did before is the part of analysis. I take the book and I analyze it. I look how many pages does it have, how heavy it is, how it's done. The more I analyze it in the details, the more I have then a clear mental image of the object. So if I want to familiarize myself with the book, first I analyze it. I see it, I turn it around and around, I look how thick it is, the color, the writing, and then I build that mental image more in a way that is more and more detailed. And the more I have familiarity with the object, by doing more analysis on the object, the more when then I want to meditate and focus on the book, it's easier to bring that object to my attention and to leave the mind there. This is to give an idea on what we mean by analytical meditation as a support of the one-pointed meditation. In Tibetan there is a way of saying, actually a part of a teaching, if I'm not wrong, related to, refer to Milarepa. To meditate without having first listened and comprehended, it's like trying to climb a huge rock with the hands closed. Because if I need to familiarize myself with something, then first of all I need to get in touch with that something. I cannot meditate on something that I don't know. Much more than that, if we talk about an inner object, first I need to know that in order to familiarize myself with that. It's as if I came to you now and now I told you, let's all meditate on Sambhogakaya. Now close eyes, Sambhogakaya. And you will say, I don't know, what is Sambhogakaya? If one is able to understand what Sambhogakaya is, then at that point can meditate on that. On the contrary case, it's called the enjoyment body of a Buddha, which anyway doesn't mean anything if one doesn't know what it means. Then bit by bit we are able to get what is the Sambhogakaya. Now is not the moment to explain it, but I need to know in order to familiarize myself with something. So for this, the part of the analytical meditation is what mostly happens in the process that is called the comprehension. So first we listen. The process of listening is to acquire information. For instance, what is about patience that we talked about before. First I read, I listen, I receive information of how much anger is bad, how much is important to reach a state of non-reaction, of aggressiveness towards in front of the object of anger. For example, there is the 6th chapter of the Guide of Bodhisattva Lifestyle, Bodhisattva Chairavatara, this text written by Shantideva. The 6th chapter is very long and is on patience. And then as one reads it, the conclusion where one gets to, there is no reason in the world to get angry. The first process is to listen, to receive information. Then, after that I have received information, then at a certain point I am sure of that thing. But I don't really know why, I didn't have a direct experience, but let's say that I listen quite enough. So yeah, it's right, I shouldn't get angry. Why I still not completely clear, but I'm totally convinced. When one has the so-called correct like the certainty, but doesn't have like the logical explaining, like someone is sure because someone explained it. This is called the process of when one completes the process of listening. And here starts the process of comprehension. That means that I analyze, I look for the defects, I try to understand the why and how of that thing, until it's not anymore something that someone has said, but a certainty that I have. I had my own experiences of how much anger is bad, I had my own experience of how much not reacting with anger was good for me, and I have my certainty both on the basis of experience and on a whole logical process my own that is not anymore someone that has said, but it's a certainty that I have. And here is also the process of analysis. So I repeat more times an analytical process where I observe, I analyze that object, in this case the importance of patience, and on the other hand it comes together also the other face of the coin, how much the anger, how much is bad. I analyze this, and then until at a certain point it becomes a total certainty that I have. The correct term that is given is Jebatsema in Tibetan, which is inferential valid cognition, the certainty of something on the basis of a logical process. So I have comprehended is not anymore a repetition of someone, is a certainty that I have. When I have got to that point, then I'm ready to meditate on that. Because if I try to meditate before having comprehended, the object is not clear enough, it's not strong enough, I may have some doubts, is it like that or is it like that? How is it? Then that makes it much harder. So that's why first there is the process of listening, comprehending, to then meditate, familiarize oneself. Another example that we have used these days is the certainty of death and the certainty of the uncertainty of the moment of death. First I need to read, to listen, then I must get to a point that becomes my own certainty, not because someone said it. And then at that point I'm able to get in touch with that feeling and to focus in a one-pointed way and to remain in that state in order to familiarize myself in a deeper way. I think it's quite clear, isn't it? So that's why analytical meditation is part both of the process of comprehension, that is that once that I have comprehended something, then at a certain point I forget about it. It's not that when we comprehend something, the mind is not all the time with that awareness. I comprehended something. Then at a certain point I must go through the process again to go back to that comprehension. Let's give a very simple example, maybe even too much. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Okay, are we sure about it? Okay, quite sure. But there is a difference of the 4 as a result of the 2 plus 2 and the 4 as and the 4 by itself. When we observe 4, is there a difference to see just 4 or to see 2 plus 2 that equals 4, that is inside of the 4? Actually, these are two different things. So one thing is to make calculations and to say 2 plus 2 equals 4, but if I want to familiarize myself with the 4 as a result of 2 plus 2, then it's not enough to just see the 4, I should go again through that process and then get again to the fact that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Then at that point I'm able to stay, can stay focused on the 4 as a result of 2 plus 2. And I have already done those calculations many times and know what the result is, but if I see the 4, I don't see the 2 plus 2 that equals 4, so I should redo the calculations to then go back to that comprehension, to that state. So I know that I will die, but at the same time I don't know it. I know, but it's not really there, so I should go again through the analytical process. until I really feel it inside of myself, and I get the goosebump and the belly closes down a bit. And then at that point, I can familiarize myself on the certainty of death. So meditation, analytical meditation, is to regenerate the object of meditation, to help to somehow make us get in touch with what we want to familiarize ourselves with. And when we're talking about inner objects, concepts, sensations, emotions, for instance, I want to familiarize myself with love. Out of the blue, it's difficult to just say, now I love everyone, and how can I do that? And so, what do? I go through an analytical path that is based on equanimity. I see that between me and you there is no difference because we all suffer, we all want to be happy, and so on. From equanimity, then I generate empathy because then I see myself in you. I see that you are like me. You also suffer as I suffer, you're also selfish as I am selfish, you're also driven by your own ignorance as I am. You try to be happy as I do. I go through the process where I see that there is no difference between us, and then, and this is the part of equanimity, this leads me naturally to generate empathy because I see myself in you. Empathy gets me to generate sympathy. Sympathy brings me to generate love. Love to generate compassion, and compassion brings me to generate altruism. I follow this analytical process, and if I do it quite well, then I will end up with that inner feeling that says, your happiness is quite important for me as mine. Once that I was able to induce myself to that feeling, then I can use that as an object of meditation and to remain with the mind still on that. But I will never be able to meditate on love if first I haven't induced myself to the feeling of love.
Okay?
And here there are different methods to induce ourselves to one state or another. In Vajrayana Buddhism, we use symbols, archetypes, where through a symbol, through an archetype that represents that state of compassion, I identify myself with that, and through that, it helps me to generate that inner state. There are many possible paths. For example, one of the most classical things that happen, one of the most used techniques, and this is also like a sort of analytical meditation, quite different, but this is also a good example to show that analytical meditation is not necessarily like as a sort of inner debate. So I'm sitting, and then I recite a mantra, and this is the visualization that starting the main visualization for almost all the mantras that you recite. As I recite a mantra, like Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re So, any mantra, I imagine beings around me. Allow myself to see that they also suffer as I suffer, what we just said, that they want to be happy as I do. At that point, from the mantra that spins around my heart, rays of light go out that go to each one of them, with no exception. It's not that first they go to one and the other one maybe if I have some time. No, it goes equally to everyone. The rays of light transform into what each being needs the most. So food for the hungry, water for the thirsty, cold for those that are hot, and then they bring love, then they also help on the emotional part, and they give protection up to bringing dharma to beings. And then every being reaches a state of peace, love towards oneself and love towards the others, a coherent view of reality. Beings reach a state of peace. When they reach this state of peace, free from their suffering, then the rays of light come back and reabsorb at our heart, while the beings recite the mantra with us. In this visualization, we are not thinking about love, about compassion, we are simply imagining this. But what we are doing, when I'm sending the rays of light to everyone in the same way, with what am I familiarizing myself with equanimity? Because I don't have attraction to one or aversion to the other, it's the same for everyone. When I send the rays of light to beings, and I offer them things so that they can be well. So I imagine that the beings receive that light that adapts to what they need the most. What am I cultivating? Love, generosity also. And also love, because I want them to be happy. I desire their happiness. So these rays of light bring to them happiness. They are freed from suffering. That means compassion. Rays of light come back while they recite the mantra with me, and I rejoice of their state of well-being. This is joy. These are the 4 qualities that we should familiarize ourselves with along the path, which are called the 4 incommensurables or limitless. Limitless equanimity, love, compassion, and joy, or limitless. The joy is for the happiness and for the virtue of the other, which is the limitless joy. And if we do the visualization well, one is not thinking about love, it's not thinking about compassion, not thinking about equanimity, and much less about rejoicing. But that happens naturally. One familiarizes oneself with that, and naturally that happens through the visualization. Are we able to see that? So, why is this a meditation? Because I'm familiarizing myself with some states. But it's a visualization that is more active, because I use... It's a meditation that is more active, because I use visualization, the recitation comes together with it, but I'm familiarizing myself with very specific things. So this is a sort of analytical meditation also, because it's not an analysis made through reasoning, but it's a process, mental process, where I use symbols, images, and so forth to generate that inner state. There are various examples of this. So when we meditate on any kind of meditation, type of meditation that there may be, what we want to obtain, there are also called the 3 qualities to custody, are necha, sencha, and sewenar, which mean necha is stability, selcha is clarity. Which means that stability is, we pick an object of meditation, the face of Buddha. Stability is that my mind is on the image of the face of Buddha and not somewhere else. When my mind is there, that means that I have reached stability. When we are at the beginning of the path, what is very likely is that when we are able to keep the mind still on the object, then the tendency is to fall on the other extreme and go towards mental torpor. So it loses clarity, it's not so vivid, it remains a bit like as if it was a sort of fog. Then, if this state, mental torpor, then from mental torpor it becomes what is called mukpa in Tibetan, which is really like a heavy state of the mind and body, of like a heavy sleepiness. It's not mental torpor, it's like the next phase. And when this goes even further, then one really starts snoring, and that becomes just sleep. And sometimes you see that, and you also hear that. And so what happens is that I try to make it so that the mind is not run for other things, and I manage to give stability. In the meditation we both need stability and clarity. Clarity means that my mind is not in a foggy state that is numb. I see and perceive with clarity the object of meditation. In order to meditate well, it's not enough to have stability and clarity, but also what is called the intensity of the clarity. That means the example that is given is that if I take the glass in my hand, one thing is that I hold the glass in the right position, then it depends with how much strength I hold the glass. I believe that it has already happened to someone to, I don't do it with the glass now, but to hold like an object in the hand and to start falling asleep, and then you hold it, but you're not really holding it. And so this is when one is holding the object in his hands, and it seems like it, but then it's not really held with intensity, with in a firm way. And similarly, one starts to meditate, there is the object, the face of Buddha, the image of the face. I'm able to visualize it. You see it there in front of me. But it's not really clear, it's not like very intense, that clarity. It's a bit like dropping out. And this is called the subtle mental torpor, when there is clarity but there is not intensity. I don't know if this is clear. The object is there, I see it and everything, but I'm not totally present. So the meditative state that one wants to reach is a state where there is presence, there is stability, in the sense that the mind is on the object and nowhere else, and at the same time there is clarity, there is not that state of inner numbness, and that happens with a certain intensity, with the full strength of oneself. In order to reach that, we have a long path that is called the path of the calm abiding, which is 9 plus 1. This state, this path is called in Tibetan Shine. Shine means calm abiding. It's translated as, okay, Shi means peaceful, Ne means to stay, to remain. So it means to remain on the object, having pacified agitation and torpor. So one is able to remain on the object without mental torpor, without agitation. And this is not yet shamatha, it's not yet shine. We will get there.
È già un'ottima cosa.
That's a really great thing. But in a few words, what happens is the following. At the beginning, one sits down to meditate. There is the work to bring back the mind on the object. And we will also see quite quickly the various passages, but one is able to have more concentration, mind is able to be more stable. It's a bit like trying to walk on a rope. At the beginning, one is not able to just to do it and falls on one side or the other. Then, bit by bit, one is able to stay on the rope, but it's not very balanced. Still like swinging on one side or the other. So when one is able, one starts to try to be on the rope, then it's more like the time that he spends down rather than up. I've tried once and I was more like on the ground rather than on the rope. This is when one tries to keep the mind on the object. And the more, it's more the time that the mind is going around rather than being on the object. This is the first step. Then, bit by bit, one is able to stay more on that, but the tendency is that I still fall either on agitation or on torpor. And then, until bit by bit, I'm able to find more balance. Then I get to a point where one has that balance, is able to stay fully on the object for the time that one wants, but still this demands an effort. There is some effort involved. When the level of familiarity with that state is such that is reached what is called Xinjiang, which is the ductility or the flexibility of mind and body, that means that as I'm staying in a balanced way on the object, with the mind that is one pointed on that, with no agitation or torpor, that generates an inner state of physical and mental well-being. And when we are able effortlessly, to remain in that state in a one-pointed way, with no mental agitation or torpor, in the state of bliss, of well-being that arises as a result of the flexibility of body and mind. The flexibility is the state of total familiarity with something. When we reach that, then one has reached shamatha, the so-called shine, the calm abiding. Here, what we do is that we are putting in front of ourselves the goal. Then there is the whole path. If we look at that drawing, now we find ourselves at the beginning of the path, even outside of the path. We're trying to get into the path, but that's really a lot, because at least we are seeing it. What we're doing it now is to look at the path, to take the map and to say, okay, we want to get there. What are the steps that we need to take? And that's already a lot to be able to do this. In the meanwhile, there is something that we should see before getting into understand these 9 steps, because along this journey there are various obstacles, and we should know them to then be able to also face them, which are called the 5 defects and the 8 antidotes for the 5 defects.
I 5 difetti sono:
the 5 defects are laziness,
il dimenticare l'istruzione,
forgetfulness about the instructions, mental torpor and agitation, not applying the antidote, and applying the antidote when it's not necessary. Let's see them quickly. Laziness, when does it come? Like before sitting to meditate. Laziness is not when someone is already sitting, comes before that. It's what doesn't allow us to sit and meditate. I don't know how many of you got up 2 hours before dawn to meditate. What was it that prevented us from doing that? Mostly is laziness. In some cases there is not even laziness, because there is not even the intention, because we are already like a step before. Me, for example, today I woke up early, but for laziness I went back to sleep. I woke up at like 5:20, something like that, and I was awake. But for laziness, instead of sitting down to meditate, the thought went through my mind, I went back to sleep. This is laziness.
Dhammageba, il secondo, che è dimenticare
The second one is to forget the object. It's the obstacle that happens when one is already sitting. One sits, and once that, okay, I was able to overcome laziness and I sat down to meditate, the next mistake that happens is that I am not able to remember and to put my mind on the object of meditation. It's called forgetting the instruction, which is not like forgetting the instruction in the sense that I don't have any more memory at all of what I should do, but I cannot bring my mind back on the object of meditation.
Il terzo difetto,
the third defect is that I was able to sit down, was able to bring my mind on the object of meditation, but there is torpor or agitation. Even if there is the object, the mind goes away, then gets into that state of dullness, of the mental torpor, and that is the mistake that we're talking about. Then there is a moment where I see that there is mental torpor or agitation, one of the two. I realize that, but I'm not able to apply the antidote. I see the defect and I remain still in front of it. I don't do anything. This is called not applying the antidote. In the previous phase, I don't even realize that. Mind goes around, and when I realize that, then that has already gone. In the next phase, then I see that mind has gone where it shouldn't have gone, and I see that maybe I'm falling in torpor, but I'm not able to apply the antidote. So the next phase is to manage to apply the so-called vigilance to be able to apply the antidote. Fifth defect is that one is able to apply the antidote and you're meditating quite well, but still you you apply the vigilance, the watchfulness. So the antidote itself becomes the interference.
Non so se è chiaro.
I don't know if it is clear.
È come per dire una persona che
It's like a person that, okay, has to meditate, and we are trying to help the person to do it well. I see the person that is doing what you shouldn't do, and I don't do anything. And this is the first mistake, to not apply the antidote. But then I got so much used to being watchful of what the other is doing, that even when the person is doing well, then I ask, sorry, but are you meditating well? Like, as if we want to help someone to sleep, and then we're there like, okay, are you sleeping?
No, perché se vuoi
No, because if you want, I can sing you a song, you know?
in realtà quello che
Actually,
per aiutare
because we want to help, I become the problem.
quindi nell'ultima fase prima
And so in the last phase, before developing the
calma dimorante
state of the calm abiding, this so-called shine,
è quando uno ormai
is when
riesce a stare con la mente
we are able to stay with the mind
senza torpore
focused
mentale,
well with no
agitazione,
mental
e
torpor
l'errore
or
che
agitation,
può
and the
venire è quello di
mistake that
applicare
may come is to apply the
l'antidoto
antidote
quando
when
in realtà
actually it's not necessary.
e per queste
And for these 5 defects, there are 8 antidotes,
che sono
which
il
are:
primo difetto,
the first
la pigrizia,
is, okay, the first defect is laziness. For laziness, we have 4 antidotes,
che sono la
which are
fede,
faith,
tepa, dumpa, tsulwa, xinjiang. Fede, aspirazione,
aspiration,
sforzo e
effort, and
flessibilità o
flexibility
duttilità.
or ductility,
Che vuol dire?
which means
Se io non ho
that
fede
if I
nella
don't have faith
meditazione,
in
farò
meditation,
tanta
then
fatica a meditare.
I will have a hard time to meditate.
Io prima devo capire che
First, I
cos'è la
need to understand what meditation
meditation,
is, why is it important to meditate. I must kind of brainwash myself. I must have that certainty, wow, how beautiful to meditate well. Then I want to read you a passage, maybe, or either this morning or this afternoon, that I have here, a passage that is very beautiful, that describes the meditative state. It's very beautiful. Anyway, the first thing is faith. I believe on how much is important for me to meditate. From faith comes aspiration. If for me it's so important to meditate, then I want to meditate. If I want to meditate, then I want also to put effort into meditation, which is the third antidote. So I put effort, put energy, I create, it means that I create some temporal and physical space, and I sit down to meditate. The result of that effort is what is called the ductility or flexibility, which means when meditating has become a habit. When meditating has become a habit, then I have overcome laziness. So when is it that I can overcome laziness about meditation? When meditation has become a habit. When meditating is just a habit. How much time do we need for that? Usually it's described that if one is able to meditate every day with a certain constancy, so more or less at the same time, for the same length, and so on, then more or less 40 days or 1 month and a half to create a habit. From the point of view also from neuroscience studies, it's described that in order to create a new neuronal path, so a new habit, like around 42 days are needed to repeating the thing. So during that 1 month and a half or 2 months, let's say it's 60 days, to manage to create a habit, then I need to renew faith constantly. I need to renew the desire, the aspiration of why I want it, to maintain the effort, the energy, in order to create the habit. Once that I've done that, then at that point, laziness, I have overcome it.
Abbastanza chiaro, no?
I think it's quite clear, right? And it's very beautiful for me to see this, because it's not like, okay, there is laziness and what do? You must have effort. Also because the final antidote to laziness is not effort, is the familiarization. So it's the habit that is created. So I see what phase I'm in, and according to me, Okay, how can we cultivate faith? By reading, by listening, by talking, by reflecting. What is meditation? Why to meditate? Why is important to do it? We should repeat that many times until arises inside of us that wish to meditate. The more we cultivate that wish to meditate, the more naturally we are able to put effort in that. When we maintain that effort, but that effort and that energy that we put into meditation, what is it nourished by? By the desire, which is nourished by faith.
Basta vedere il mondo.
You can just look at the word, at the advertisements. Imagine like a society of which a company of which you've seen a lot of advertisement, like Coca-Cola. Once that you have seen like the advertisement and you have drank Coca-Cola, Coke, is it enough, the advertisement, or they keep on doing it? Why? Because they want you to create the habit. In order for me to create the habit, then I need to drink it many times. In order to drink it many times, then I need to believe, I need to see, I need to have this desire for it, I need to put energy to have the experience and to repeat that experience many times. So in other words, if we really want to create familiarity, the habit of meditating, flexibility, and so the habit of meditating, we need to see a lot of advertisement of it. How important it is to meditate. Why should I meditate? You write it everywhere, you stick it there, you put it on the screen of the phone, you put it on the mirror. One should brainwash himself. I need to meditate, it's important. I want to have a concentrated mind, I want to develop my inner qualities. There is no other tool to do it. We need to repeat this many times and to be almost obsessive. And when we repeat it a lot, then the desire arises. The desire arises naturally. The stronger that aspiration, that desire, the more energy we put. When we put the energy, that naturally, also bit by bit, we create the habit. And here in this step, there is something that helps a lot, which is the commitment, the morality. We want to meditate. I take a commitment to meditate every day, half an hour. I take the commitment with someone. I take an object that may be a ring or an object that I have in front of me, something to remember me of my commitment. Because there will be the day that I wake up and I will not feel like meditating. Definitely there will be. So I forget. We try to trick ourselves, but actually it's not possible. Like we pretend that we are forgetting that we should meditate. Ah no, I'm in a hurry. No, I can't meditate. And there's another thing. Ah, I forgot. I didn't feel like it. But if there is a strong commitment and I am able to respect my commitment, no, I took a commitment with that person. Some cases, like the other day, for instance, a friend told me, look, I took the commitment of meditating every day. Me with a friend of mine, we shook our hands and we both took the commitment of meditating 1 hour a day for 3 months. So the fact of having taken the commitment one with the other, that they both had to do it, helped a lot. So here, what helps to maintain the force of the effort, commitment is something that helps a lot. Also what helps us a lot in this process is to have virtuous friends. If we agree among 2 or 3 people, okay, we meditate every day at that time, even if one is not present and knows that the other is meditating at that time. Whatever, to have the support of one to the other on that process, that is something that can help a lot. And so the first defect is laziness. Antidotes, utility, familiarity, that is, to create a habit. In order to create the habit, I must put effort, energy. To do that, I must have the desire, aspiration. And for that, I must know, I must believe, and so faith.
Una volta che mi sono seduto,
Once that I sat down, the interference is that of not remembering the object of meditation. So I sit down, how beautiful, I'm sitting to meditate, what do I do now? I don't know. The mind is not able to grasp the object. And that's where the antidote is what is called trempa, which is translated as memory. Trempa, by memory here we don't mean like remember, but to access to our memory. We need to access to that object, mental object, to access to the memory of that object. And in order to have a good memory of the object, we must familiarize ourselves with the object. And so because of that, I also gave you the image to draw the face of Buddha. The more times we do that, we make that drawing. The goal is not to be good artists. Me, for example, I made it, but I don't show you because it's terrible, because I'm totally unable to draw. If you tell me to draw a person and I still like draw a stick, like really I'm not able to draw. But yesterday I sat down and I did it more times, and the goal is not the result. The goal is to familiarize oneself with the image. The more times I do it, the easier I will be able to see it when I close my eyes. So in order to have memory, I must create familiarity with the object. So if I want to meditate on a physical object, on the image of something, then I put in front of me the image of the face of Buddha, I look at it, I connect with that mental image, and then I keep my eyes almost closed and generate the mental image. The object of meditation is not the visual image, but the mental image. But I use the physical object to recognize myself with that. And that's the antidote for the forgetfulness of the instructions. Once that I'm there, and I was able to remember of the object, to take my mind back on that, then at that point comes the third defect, which is the strongest of the whole path, which is agitation, mental agitation or mental torpor. These are the two, by all means, the strongest ones and more present along the whole path. And so, what do we do here? We have mental agitation and mental torpor. What we need here, first of all, we should make a distinction between mental torpor and what is called also translated
ottundimento.
Like a mental dullness.
Cosa capite per ottundimento? Ah? Uno stato di pesantezza?
Like a state of heaviness, which is mukpa in Tibetan means literally fog. So this state of this foggy state, that what is it aside of the name that we give to it, is when there is no clarity at all, mental clarity. You see but don't see the object. There is like a sort of sleepiness, heaviness in the body and the mind. This is the state called mukpa, of mental dullness.
Però questo non è il torpore mentale.
This is not the mental torpor. This is also the phase after that. If one starts to meditate and sees that there is this state of this strong fogging, then one shouldn't look for the antidote for the mental torpor. Should get up and put like some fresh water and face and like walk a bit and then sit down again, because you have already gone beyond.
Ok, quindi non è il caso, ottundimento, quindi non voler qua non è il caso, è questo stato dove...
So it's really this state where there is this heaviness, this state where really it's almost as if one is not able to do it because the body is very heavy and the mind is slow, heavy, like as if one was trying to put the mind on the object of meditation, and it's like walking with some chains and balls. If one reached this state, then it's not mental torpor. And so here is better to stop, to get up, to walk a bit, to put some water on the face, and then come back. When we talk about mental torpor and mental agitation, by all means, torpor is when we have the object of meditation is there is the presence of it, but there isn't really clarity. There is like a thin fog. So I'm able to see the object, but it's as if, okay, the state of total fogging, it's like as if one is reading like in the middle of the fog and is not able even almost to see the object. But to have mental torpor is like having dirty glasses. Like you see it, but like there is something that it's not clear. Like to me it has happened sometimes, okay, that I realized that I had dirty glasses and then, wow, how clearly can I see? Before that I thought I was seeing clearly, but actually there was something there. And so this is about that part of the mental torpor. Let's see here the note that I put. So when there is mental torpor, it means that there is stability, so the mental object is there, but lacks clarity. When there is subtle mental torpor, the object is there is also clarity, but it lacks intensity. I'm there, but I'm not there completely. This is when we talk about the mental torpor. But in this moment, we should worry more about the gross torpor. Now we're giving an overview of the path.
Se noi guardiamo il
disegno, look at the drawing, that then maybe also this afternoon we project it and we also see it together step by step. Mental torpor is represented by the elephant, which is the mind, black in color. Agitation is represented by the monkey. When one starts to meditate, who commands? Torpor or agitation? Agitation, if you look at the drawing, who's in front? The monkey. The monkey that gives the direction, then the elephant follows, and then after the elephant there is the desperate practitioner running after it. And this is us at this moment. One is there, okay, I want to try to hold the mind on the object, but I really have a hard time doing it. This is the beginning. This is the first step of the 9 steps. So I'm there trying to hold the mind. So by mental torpor, mind lacks clarity. Mental agitation is when I lose stability, so the mind is not on the object, it goes somewhere else. I am sitting all nicely and who looks from outside, wow, he's really meditating well. Then maybe I'm doing like something else completely. When mental torpor is very strong, what happens is that one realizes of the mental torpor when it's not on the second object. Explain better. I am with the face of Buddha, okay, I lose the presence of the face of Buddha, I go on somewhere else. But that second thing brings to a third, then to a fourth thing. Then at the beginning one is like at the 20th thing and one hasn't even realized. One of the exercises that helps is when one realizes that one has lost concentration, the object, to come back. Why am I here? Me, once I was studying in India, something that was difficult, was very focused. And then at a certain point I realized that I was reading the words, but I wasn't perceiving the meaning. My mind ended up like in the house of my father in Brazil, like a whole story. And I asked myself, why? And so, walking backwards, I remember like that this thing with the other, and like so in the image of there was like a whole connection of things about the. And then I was reading, a fly flew by, and I saw like a crack on the wall that made me remember of the house of my father that brought me somewhere else, and again, and then I ended up in a place that had really nothing to do with it. This is when we have mental agitation with no control. Here we should make a distinction though.
Il difetto non è
The
solo
defect is not only mental agitation, there is also mental torpor and mental agitation, but together with mental agitation that in Tibetan is called gopa, there is also something that is called troa, which is very similar. What is the difference? Mental agitation, the so-called gopa, the main one, is a result of desire. It's the mind that looks for an object of desire. And so, the basis of gopa, of this mental agitation, is that feeling of dissatisfaction that comes after pleasure.
l'esempio che ho fatto ieri.
Example that I gave yesterday, okay, I ate something very tasty, my mind keeps on looking for it and to reproduce that experience. I am addicted to the smartphone, I'm meditating, and then I think about the videos of this and that. Where are the puppies or whatever? That video there, or I think about that person to which I have attachment. I think about things, I feel like sleeping, mind looks for the object of attachment. And so this gopa, this mental agitation, comes out of this sort of restlessness that comes from dissatisfaction.
Mi spiego meglio? Chiaro? Non
Is it clear? Should I explain better? No, because sometimes I ask you, have you understood? Yes, but what have you understood? So if it's not clear, I give other examples. It's important for us to understand that mental agitation is not a conceptual thing. It's something that is deeper. And the stronger the stimuli of pleasure, the stronger also that mental agitation, that feeling of restlessness that doesn't come down until I am able to obtain the object of desire.
Per questo che abbiamo visto
And so for this we've seen that among the prerequirements to meditate well, there is that of decreasing the desires. And what mostly obstructs us during the process of meditation is the mind that follows desires, this mental agitation that comes from desire. But there is also distraction, the mental agitation, that in Tibetan is called troa, that is the result of aversion or of virtuous thoughts also. For example, it could happen that I'm there meditating, and then at a certain point comes to my mind an object of anger, a situation where I was left badly, and so I'm ruminating on that. That person did that. See, next time that I see him, I was telling this and that. We are not attracted by an object of desire, but by an object of aversion. This is not gopa, this is called troa, still a form of distraction, but is not the mental agitation, the main mental agitation. In Tibetan, these two words, I actually don't know how to translate them correctly. One is mental agitation, the other is dispersion, translated like this usually, but that mean the same thing, but in Tibetan they are two different things. One comes from the desire, and the other is the agitation, dispersion, that comes from anything that is not desire. So as I'm there, that I'm meditating, I have the object, and then at a certain point I start to think, because phenomena are impermanent, okay, but that's not the object. So also that becomes an interference, but in the great majority of cases, what takes us away from the object is agitation that comes from desire, attachment. So, because of that, that is considered the main obstruction, the main enemy together with mental torpor. But there are also other types. What to do in this case? Here we need two antidotes that are called in Tibetan Drempa and Sheshing. Drempa is translated as memory, awareness. Sheshing as vigilance, watchfulness. Let's give an example. I take my car and I leave for a journey. I want to go from here.
Vado a Milano.
I go to Milan, okay. I'm going to Milan, and then at a certain point I forget where I'm going. So I'm going, and then at a certain point I forget. And then maybe I'm also not so used to going to Milan. Maybe I'm used to going to Varese, for example. And then at a certain point I take the way to Varese. And when I go to Varese, then I realize, no, but I should have gone to Milan. This has already happened to many people. Maybe not like in such long journeys, but maybe I go every day in the morning at the office, and then the day I have to bring my kid to school, and I forget that I have my kid in my car and I am at the office and not at school. That could happen. The other example is that I know that I have to go to Milan. I have certainty of that and clarity, but I don't realize where I'm going. And then at a certain point, there is the way to Genova, and I take the way to Genova without realizing. And then I realize, I'm in Genova, but I should have been in Milan. The first case is the lack of memory. So I lose the contact with the object. Second is the lack of vigilance or of awareness. So I don't realize what I'm doing. We need one and the other. I need to remember where I'm going, and I need to realize also where I'm going. In meditation, what does this mean? That memory is like a sort of rope that binds us to the object. If we look at the drawing, the practitioner has in his hands a hook and a rope. The rope is the memory and the hook is the watchfulness. Vigilance is also translated sometimes as awareness. So what does this mean? That when I'm able to remember what my object of meditation is, so the mind goes around, I bring back on the face of Buddha. That memory of the face of Buddha, that it's like what I bind my mind to, what helps me to go back there. But in order to do that, then I need a hook that takes my mind back. And that hook is called vigilance or awareness. That is a small part of our mind, as we are meditating, remains observing. At the beginning, our vigilance is not very good. It's like someone that realizes when already it's too late. Okay, you have the job of like that this person doesn't get out of there. Okay, then he's there. To me, it has already happened. Okay, please make sure that the dog stays there. Yes. Where's the dog? I don't know. Now you have to go and look for it. It has happened already many times, like for example that one of my dogs has the passion of going around with another dog, which is Tana and Chandra. And when I was in the office, it happened many times like that. People know that they shouldn't go away, run away from the office, and then they are there, and then at a certain point they are not there anymore. And so then you can't even go and find them, you have to wait for them to come back. So the one that is capable on the vigilance realizes realizes of the fact before it happens. So one that has no vigilance doesn't even realize also when the fact has happened. So I'm there meditating, mind goes somewhere else, I don't even realize at a certain point, okay, I end meditating and I don't even realize that my mind was not on the object. Vigilance is, I realize, I'm able to see at the beginning, I realized that I lost the object of meditation when already got to the 5th, 6th, 20th object, and at that point I must take it back on the object. And the more I train this part of vigilance, the more I'm able to realize when it's going away. No, okay, here, come back. And these are these two aspects. On one hand, I bind the mind to the object, which is memory, which is called memory, which is to keep the presence of the object, and on the other hand, I observe whether it's going away from that or not. When I see that it goes away, then I take it back. And these are the two antidotes that we need, which are called Trempa and Sheshing. And so,
noi abbiamo, quando vi abbiamo
okay,
torpore mentale
when we have mental torpor and agitation, we need vigilance with memory, because, okay, it goes in the mental torpor, I realize that I'm falling in the mental torpor, and I make it so that I have more clarity. So I try to wake the mind. Also, the posture of meditation, if one starts to sit with the head that is more like in front, also like bending down. Also, the object of visualization is an image that is too low, that has the tendency of increasing mental torpor. If, on the other hand, one has the image that is too high, has the tendency of generating agitation. So that's why whatever one visualizes, imagines, should be on the horizon of like on the line of the eyes. Distance is more or less as if one was laying down with the legs and arms extended. That is the distance more or less, that's where we visualize the object. So if I realize that I'm going towards mental torpor, then I try to go back on the object and to put clarity back on it. It's like waking up. But remembering ourselves that when I generate more clarity, the tendency is to fall in the mental agitation. When I see that I am into the mental agitation and I bring myself back to the object, the tendency is to hold the object too tight and to fall into the torpor. So the beginning of the path is really like this game of swinging. I'm on the rope, walking on it, falling on one hand, and I throw myself to the other side, and then I fall again until I find the balance.
Il terzo difetto, il torpore,
and so the third defect is the torpor and agitation. The fourth defect is to not apply the antidote. So I'm meditating, I have the object, I'm able to realize through vigilance that mind is going somewhere else, but I'm not able to stop it. I'm able to realize that I'm generating mental torpor, but I'm not able to bring clarity. And this is the fourth defect, not applying the antidote. And here, what is called the antidote is to apply the antidote, really to generate the strength to say, okay, I should apply it, I should act, I shouldn't be indifferent in front of what is happening. And then all these points, about all these points we can get into many details. There are instructions about this. The next step is that I'm able to meditate well, the mind is there, I don't have mental torpor or agitation, but I am so used to vigilance that I am watchful of what I shouldn't be watchful, and so this is called duceba, applying the antidote when it's not necessary. The solution for this is called tankyum, which is called equanimity. It was something that Lama was sometimes saying that I remembered of a few days ago. Like, live it like that. when there was something that to put hands in it anyways doesn't solve it, makes the thing worse. Sometimes he just said, leave it like that.
Questo tagnum è una cosa un po'
So
così,
this is something like that.
rilassati,
Just relax.
non hai bisogno
You
più
don't
di
need
vigilare,
anymore to be watchful.
ormai ci sei.
Now you're there.
E quindi
And so
riuscire a non
to be able to
applicare
not
più
apply
l'antidoto,
the
perché
antidote
ormai ci
anymore
sei
because
arrivato.
anyway you got there now.
Questi sono i 5
These are the the five defects and the 8 antidotes. Is it quite clear? Where I want to get to is that everyone can have at least a vague idea of what is the path. First, we need to give an overview, then we can get into the various details.
Detto questo,
Having said this,
ci sono,
there are.
andiamo a vedere. Il prossimo punto
The next
vengono
step
chiamati i 5
is
veli.
called the 5
I 5
veils.
veli,
The 5
Zibanata, le
veils,
5 cose che
or
ho
the
studiato,
5 obscurations,
sono
are
5 cose che vanno a creare
5 things that
ostruzioni
create
per la
obstruction to
meditazione,
meditation,
5 cose che vanno a
things that
difficoltare la meditazione
make
e sono presenti sia durante
meditation
la
more
meditazione
difficult.
che
They are
fuori
present
dalla
both
meditazione.
during the meditation and outside of
Il
meditation.
primo
The first
viene chiamato
is called
che è il desiderio sensoriale.
the sensorial desire,
È l'attaccamento,
the
la
attachment,
voglia dei
the
piaceri sensoriali.
want for
Quindi
sensorial
più io ho
desires.
desiderio
So
al gusto,
the
al
more I have
suono,
desire for the
al
touch, for
tatto,
the
a questo e
hearing,
quell'altro,
for
più forte
the taste, this
è
and
il mio
that, the
desiderio
strongest,
sensoriale, dei
the stronger
piaceri in
my
generale,
desire for
che possa
pleasures in
essere
general,
chi
that
ha
may
il
be
desiderio, la fissa con il cibo,
who has the
chi ce l'ha
fixation
con il
with food
sesso,
or
chi
with
ce l'ha
sex
con
or
il suono, la
or with
musica,
sound, with
piuttosto che
music or
ok?
whatever.
Più forte è questa
The
brama, questo
stronger
desiderio,
this desire,
più
the more
la mente viene
mind
trascinata da
is
questo.
dragged away by it.
Ok? E qua ci sono
And
alcune
here
note,
there are
dicevo.
some notes.
Quindi, che cosa è questa brama
Okay, so what
sensoriale?
is this sensory desire? Is the mind that constantly goes back on food, on a person, on a certain sensation, on a pleasant project, on a situation,
E viene descritta qua,
and
questi
is
5
described.
veli vengono
These
descritti
5
come
veils
5
are described
metafore
like as 5
La prima, la
metaphors
mente è
for
come
water, and the
l'acqua
first
piena di
one is
colori.
like the mind that is full
Non
of
c'è
colors.
chiarezza perché è riempita di tante
There is no
cose.
clarity because it's filled with so many
Quindi la
things.
nostra acqua sì,
So
la persona
in
che
our
voglio
water, okay,
il
there is
lavoro
like the
che devo
person that I
fare,
like,
guarda
the
che
job that I
bello,
need to
domani
do,
vado lì,
how beautiful that
che
tomorrow I'm
piacerebbe,
going there,
quella
the
persona
person I love so
guarda
much,
che
and the
bello
moment
sarebbe
it was
quella
so
cosa.
nice,
La
beautiful
mente è lì che
about this
gira
thing and that.
intorno
So the
agli
mind is
oggetti di
going around the
desiderio.
objects of
E
desire.
questo genera
And this,
ovviamente
of course, generates
agitazione
agitation,
mentale, porta la mente fuori
brings the mind
dall'oggetto di
away from the
meditazione.
object of
Ok?
meditation.
Qual è l'antidoto a
What
questo?
is the antidote to this?
Proteggere i sensi,
Protect
custodire le
the
porte dei
senses
sensi.
to custody the doors of
Se
the
io durante
senses.
il giorno
So if
e
during the
fra le
day
sessioni di
and during the
meditazione vado a
meditation sessions
indurmi
I
in
induce
cose molto
myself
piacevoli,
to things that are very
cosa
pleasant,
succede quando mi siedo?
what happens when I
Mangio
sit
qualcosa di
down?
buonissimo,
Like, for
buonissimo da
example, I eat
meditare, la mente
something
dove va?
very tasty and then I sit down to
Che buono
meditate.
quel pranzo, sai?
Then the mind goes, ah, beautiful
La mente si mangia qualcosa che
lunch
fa schifo,
was.
fa l'effetto contrario, anche
Then
per me non
also
ha senso questo
if we eat
pranzo,
something disgusting, that
voglio
also
più
gives the
mangiare
same
quella cosa.
effect. Ah, I don't want to eat the same
Però di
thing.
solito il
But
desiderio è
usually
più forte.
desire is stronger.
Quindi dovremmo in qualche modo
So
cercare
somehow
di
we
avere una
should
condotta
try
che
to
sia
have a
equilibrata,
balanced
che non va
conduct
dagli
that
estremi,
doesn't go to
gli
extremes,
stimoli molto forti,
like a
perché
very
se noi
strong
abbiamo stimoli
stimulation, because
forti,
if
la
we have
mente segue
strong
questi
stimuli, then mind follows that.
Il prossimo veleno,
The
il prossimo
next
velo, che è anche un
veil,
veleno, è in tibetano si dice nösem, che è la
in Tibetan is
malevolenza,
nusen, which is
voglia di
malevolence,
far del
the
male,
wish to harm,
rancore,
rancor,
odio.
hatred.
Ok? Uno sta lì a rimuginare il
One is
torto che ha
ruminating on
subito,
something
sta
that
lì a pensare come poter
he
vendicarsi,
received
sta
and
lì a
is
girare intorno a
so
qualcosa, ma
thinking
guarda
about
quello lì
something,
perché
ah, but
fa
look at
quando
that
non doveva,
person, that
ma
she
perché
did that
questo.
and this and that.
Mi sa che ne abbiamo di esempi.
And I think we have definitely some examples of
E
this.
questo è l'altra cosa, un altro
And
velo che
this
ci
is another
blocca.
veil that blocks us
E viene dato
and
simile all'acqua
is
che
described
bolle.
as the water that is boiling. that is not able to stay still and keeps on boiling, with that feeling that is really based on a part of hatred, anger, of rancor, and so on. Antidote is love, patience, and also the awareness of the interdependence. And so, if I am in a state of a lot of anger, rancor, this will be one of the obstacles to meditation, just like a state of strong desire. I believe that it's quite clear, isn't it? The third is Mukpa Danyi. The third veil is the state of sleepiness and fogging. So what happens, okay, is that there is the heaviness of the body, the mind is not able to just stay still, one is really like feeling heavy and so starts with a state of fogging and ends up sleeping. And ends up even with snoring. At a certain point one is really snoring. That is represented by the water that is full of seaweed. And the water is our mind in this case. So it's covered by many seaweeds. And this is the other veil. The antidote is a bit of light, air, more oxygen, sometimes more fresh water to get up. The antidote here is not really an inner thing, but because when one gets to this state, then first of all needs to stop what one is doing, to get up, wake oneself up. So I don't know if coffee is a real antidote, because danger of substances that wake us up is that then on one hand they take away that problem of the sleepiness, but then they create agitation. And we also don't want that.
Il quarto velo viene chiamato Goba e
The fourth veil is called Goba and Cuba, which is called the mental agitation and remorse, which means that the mind is restless, that anyway keeps on revisiting things that happened, how was it like that, kind of ruminating on the past. See if today I woke up earlier, would have been better, why didn't I do that, that should have been like that, and yeah, I know it's so beautiful to meditate, but if I had started when I was younger, then it should have gone much better. You see that time I had the opportunity, but actually I didn't do it well.
Questo è un altro velo.
This is another veil that obscures constantly and is represented like the water that is surfaced by the wind. The water is not calm, there is the wind moving the water, and that's the mind that is not able to stay here and now. And it's mostly facing the past and also the objects of desire, but mostly towards the past. The fifth veil is the uncertainty, doubt.
Viene rappresentato dall'acqua.
It's represented by a cloudy, dark water that is not transparent. Doubt is like trying to meditate without having first understood and comprehended well. One sits down to meditate and asks himself, am I meditating well? Maybe I'm not doing the right thing.
Noi non stiamo parlando.
We're not talking about the intellectual doubt that is healthy, that I know that I'm not, that I don't know and I want to know, but we're talking about an inner agitation due to uncertainty that comes with it. And so first it's important to have listened and understood, having clear instructions and faith in what we're doing. So in order to meditate well, first we need to avoid strong desires, strong aversions, the state of sleepiness and fogging, the state of agitation and remorse, so ruminating on the past. And on this point of the agitation and remorse is where we have also the practice of Vajrasattva. Pabokka Rinpoche said it very clearly. If we try to meditate and we're full of remorse, we will not be able to focus, and without even knowing why. And so for this, it's important first to be at peace with our past, at least like a bit. And so that's where we have the practice of Vajrasattva, the practice of being able to put oneself at peace with the past. Doubt. The antidote for doubt is really the process of listening, understanding, analyzing, to have certainty of what we're doing.
Perciò, quello che abbiamo visto che cos'è? Abbiamo avuto una visione più o meno di quello che intendiamo per meditare.
Seen more or less what we mean by meditating and seen what the mistakes of meditation are. What are the dangers that are there and how to face them. One of the things that for me is very clear is that during the meditative process, it's not something that I just do once or sometimes. It's something that I should work on both when I'm trying to meditate at the beginning and also when I'm not doing it. Because it's about that, like I try to meditate, but then between one session and the other, then I start to do things that stimulate a lot the part of pleasure, then becomes difficult. Try to meditate, you just fell in love with someone that is next to you, and you go to meditate. Where does mind go? To the object of meditation, if that's the person. Otherwise it goes somewhere else. But so if one, on the other hand, is like in a strong state of anger, of aversion, and tries to meditate, then where does mind go? There. So for this it's important to give support to the meditative process. And as we saw yesterday, it's important to eat also correctly, to sleep correctly, because if I don't eat well and I don't sleep well, I have one of the veils, which is the fogging and the sleepiness. It's important to create familiarity with the object of meditation outside of the moment of meditation. So, if my object is the face of Buddha, then I draw it, I look at it, and I create familiarity with the object. One moment or the other, also after lunch, then I draw it like 1,000 times, I see it somewhere, so that I can always bring myself back to that object.
Io direi una cosa.
I will say one thing. I give you a quick overview about the 9 steps because, okay, according to what we have just said now about this whole thing, then it's quite clear to have an overview of the 9 steps. Then maybe we also review them later. But the first one is called Semchokpa, which means to place the mind. Tsongkhapa describes it in the following way: to withdraw completely the mind from any external object and to direct it towards the inner object. So the first of the 9 steps is when we remove our attention from other objects and we direct it towards an inner object, which means that when one wishes to meditate, okay, I sit to meditate and I set myself to that goal, and I want to take away the mind from other objects and to bring it to the objects that I chose. What we do, for example, of the exercise of the breathing exercise, to sit down, to breathe, to bit by bit bring the mind back to the present moment until one is able to choose the object of meditation and to place the mind on that. When we do that, then we are in the first level. So this level that is called placing the mind.
Quindi dove vado a porre la mente?
So I place the mind on the object of meditation.
Fin qua ce la facciamo, no?
Okay, up to here we can do it. But in order to place the mind on the object of meditation, I must first of all go through the preliminaries and do them well. So to be able to stay with myself, to breathe well, then be able to bit by bit stop the agitation and to place the mind my mind there. There is something, okay, that I didn't explain before. When we choose the object of meditation in order to develop concentration, often is given the advice of the face of Buddha or of the body of Buddha. We could do it with anything. If one has an object, it could be the face of a person or any object. For a person that has a lot of mental agitation, it's advised to start with observing one's own breath. At this point, is not anymore an exercise of breathing. Our breath, the awareness on our breath, observing our breath, becomes the object of meditation. And at that point, I keep my mind on my breath. For example, one of the techniques is that I keep as an object of meditation the sensation at my nostrils. So I simply observe the sensation of my nostrils as I breathe, nothing else. Mind goes somewhere else, then I take it back at the sensation at my nostrils. Goes somewhere else, then I take it back at the sensation of my nostrils. At that point, it's not anymore an exercise, a breathing exercise, but a meditation that uses as an object of meditation this sensation at the nostrils of when I breathe. Because to meditate on the breathing, one should also understand what the object is. The object is the air that comes in and out, the movement of the abdomen, temperature of the air. Usually we use the sensation at our nostrils as we breathe. And this is one of the objects of meditation that are easy and accessible for everyone. I know people that did quite long periods of meditation using this technique of the sensation at our nostrils. And that person say that at certain point, after many hours doing that, then the sensation becomes more and more vivid, and it seems almost as if breathing is burning for how strong the sensation is. But in general, for us it's much easier to focus on the sensation of on our nostrils, of the air coming in and out, rather than on the image of the Buddha or something else. So here, this is really when we go from an exercise, a breathing exercise, to a meditation on our breath.
Chiara la differenza, no? E quando andiamo a fare la meditazione sul respiro è quando io mi concentro su un aspetto del respiro e cerco di...
When I meditate on the breath is when I focus on an aspect of the breathing and I keep the mind there with no agitation and no torpor. So when I put the mind on the object, then I am at the first level, which is to place the mind.
Secondo passaggio.
Second step, to place continuously.
Lama Tsongkhapa lo definisce.
Lama Tsongkhapa describes it as maintaining that same mind on the object without deviating somewhere else in a continuous way. The experience, you remain on the object for continuous short times, like a time of a short recitation. The time outside and inside the object are equal. On the first level is described that you're able to place the mind on the object for a few moments. Then you lose the mind and you realize it much later. The time outside of the object is enormously greater than the time on the object. So when one is trying to meditate and at the beginning, okay, I should observe my breath, and in 30 minutes he has done like 10 seconds focusing on the breath, it means that you're on the first level. You're doing the right thing. And it's a gradual process that bit by bit we are able to develop. What happens is that sometimes one says, I am not able to do it. But this is what happens for all of us at the beginning. It's not something because I'm not able to do it. Second level is when I'm able to place the mind on the object and I'm able to give continuity to that presence for longer. That continuity maybe is like for a few seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. like a longer time, usually less than a minute. But I'm able to keep the mind for longer on the object. Then I lose it, then I bring it back. Then I'm able to keep it for longer. Then I lose it again. Then I bring it back. Then I'm able to keep it for longer.
Questo è il secondo livello.
This is the second level, to place continuously. The third is described to put patches.
Quando per dimenticanza la mente si disprende,
when by forgetfulness the mind is dispirited to the outside, and to realize about that and to patch it back up to the same object, like a patch on a hole that is opened. Memory is already quite strong to take it back quickly. So on the second level, I'm able to bring it for a while, then mind goes somewhere else. You need time to be able to bring it back. Then when you're able to bring it back, you're able to stay for a while, then you lose it again, and you need some time again to take it back. On the third level, I'm able to stay on the object, mind goes away, but quickly I'm able to go back on the object. So it's not something that requires a lot of time and effort. I'm able more easily to bring it back. Fourth level,
porre da vicino.
Place closely. Having generated the force of memory, it's not dispersed outside by forgetfulness, so you don't lose the object of meditation. The sensation of the nostril, the face of Buddha. The mind doesn't lose the object anymore, it remains fixed there. It may lose the clarity, the intensity, more mental torpor, subtle agitation. Subtle agitation is when you have the object, but still a part of the mind is going somewhere else, but hasn't gone away totally. So this level is when there is still some agitation and so on, but it's subtle.
Quello che succede quando
What is described is that when we reach this fourth level, we don't lose the object for the whole session. So you sit, you have the object of meditation, and you have it from the beginning to the end. So here the problem is not the agitation, but the quality. So at this point, we shouldn't work on keeping the mind still on the object, but what is the quality of that mental state? With what quality I'm able to perceive the object? With clarity, with firmness.
Uno degli errori più gravi che
One of the most serious mistakes that may happen here is that when one reaches this state, then one believes that he has reached the goal. Like, okay, I'm able to meditate well, I'm able to keep my mind well there on the object. So the danger is to meditate for long in a state of subtle torpor. So I'm there, I see the object, the mind is able to stay on the object, but there is not enough clarity. There isn't really that strength, that intensity. I'm not fully on that object. And sometimes it's described also by many masters that one can spend years in this state, thinking that he has reached the state of calm abiding, when actually you're like halfway, not even that. The fifth state is called Dubarchepa, which means to dominate. Definition is by contemplating the qualities of samadhi, to rejoice of those, then you see the qualities, and mind is dominated in the samadhi. Through vigilance, you overcome gross torpor. What happens in this state is that one, as one remains in the state of meditation on the object, we generate also pleasure, joy in remaining there, and that joy that is there, that for remaining on the object in meditative state, eliminates torpor. Because in general, the state of joy wakes us up. So the danger, what is it? Is that, okay, I remain on the object. When we have put a lot of effort to keep the mind still on the object, the tendency is to fall towards the torpor. And that's also the moment where one feels like when one actually feels like a joy, the pleasure of remaining on the object, then that also eliminates torpor, the gross torpor. There is clarity on the object.
Ok, questi sono tutti dettagli che non servono
These are all
adesso.
details that
Poi abbiamo il sesto.
the sixth is Shivarchepa, to pacify. Sixth level, to pacify, is described like this: seeing dispersion as a defect, we calm discontent towards samadhi. It means that we pacify any aversion to meditation. There isn't any more resistance to sitting, because meditation at the beginning is difficult. And naturally, what do we feel towards what is difficult? Attraction or aversion? Aversion. So there is a place where one sits to meditate and does it and everything, but there is a part somewhere that says there is a certain effort, difficulty. There is like, in this case, pacification, one pacifies completely any form of aversion, of effort about meditation itself.
In questo caso va superato.
And in this case, it overcomes completely any level of mental agitation. So the mind remains totally on the object with no effort, and there isn't anymore that part of difficulty about meditation itself. This means that until here there is a certain effort. There is a place where one anyway needs to generate effort, it doesn't come completely spontaneous. The seventh level is to pacify completely, to calm completely discontent, fogging, sleepiness and similar things, just as they arise, without welcoming any of them. The 5 views that we talked about before, up to now they were present. And sometimes one, as is meditating, comes the veil of desire, of aversion, of sleepiness, and is not able to stop it right away. This state that is called the complete pacification is a state where just as these veils are about to arise, one is able to pacify them immediately. One is not taken away by them. So we're not dragged by desire or aversion or sleepiness or doubt and so on. We are not dragged away by this.
E quindi con questo va a
superare sia il torpore. With this we overcome both torpor and agitation, subtle torpor and agitation,
che si riesce a superare con poco sforzo, non
and we're able to overcome it with little effort. And just as subtle torpor and agitation arise, there is no more gross agitation or torpor, we are able to stop them. Eighth point, to make one-pointed, to apply oneself so that we can proceed without application. Who commits to discipline obtains what arises by itself. You just need little effort at the beginning, then the whole session flows without any defects and without interruption. One, it's a bit like saying, okay, you put a little effort to run the engine, and then after it just goes. So at the beginning of meditation, you still need to put a little effort to put oneself on the object, to put oneself in the meditation. And once that it's just going, then there is no torpor, no agitation, both on either on the gross or subtle level, and is able to remain for long on the object of meditation.
Da questo viene il nono, che è l'ultimo.
From this comes the ninth, which is called Namparjokpa, which means to be in balance, the meditative state of balance. The definition is, through the familiarity with the eighth, we get spontaneously and by itself, and we acquire ownership what is called the ownership of the samadhi, of the meditative state. There isn't even that effort at the beginning. It's something that becomes spontaneous and natural to get into the state of concentration in the object. Mind gets into the meditative state and remains in that state with no initial effort for all the time that one wants, and there isn't anymore any of the five veils. One could say, I have reached the goal. Not yet.
Che cosa manca? Quando uno ottiene questo,
When one obtains this, then after this, what we lack is when we remain in this, then we generate what is called the ductility or the flexibility of body and mind. In other words, by keeping this meditative state at a certain point, being in a meditative state in the object in a one-pointed way, with concentration, with no torpor, agitation and so on, generates a state of physical and mental pleasure. In the first moment, we are overwhelmed by that pleasure, then that force of the pleasure goes away, and at that point there is a continuum that remains, and not only it becomes easy and spontaneous, but also pleasant to remain in the object of meditation. And when we reach this, then it means that we have reached shamatha, which is represented in the path. At the end there is, in the top of the path, there is a practitioner sitting next to the elephant. This is when we have reached the 9th level. And after that, there is a moment where there is monk flying. That means that he has, that he's flying in bliss. He has reached that state of physical and mental pleasure that allows him to, then you see that he rides the elephant, the mind, on the rainbow. That means that he can familiarize himself with what he wants. And then there is the last part where he is still riding the elephant on the rainbow with a sword in his hand and a fire. That sword represents when he puts together the state of one-point meditation of shamatha with the wisdom of the correct view of reality, which is called the state of union, of profound vision and calm abiding, of shamatha and vipassana. Then we will explain. That is the final state that we want to reach. What we will see after that is that, okay, we go again through these 9 steps by looking at the drawing. In the afternoon we put the projector with the images so that you're all able to see well, to give an idea, to have an idea of the path. Someone could say, but what's the point of this? The point is to have a direction. What we said, the first thing that we should do in order for something to happen is to wish for it. How can I desire something that I don't even know what it is? In order for me to meditate, I need to develop faith, first of all. Faith develops the desire, the aspiration. And so, when I start to see the various steps that are there, I'm able to see that it's something that is possible, that is real. And in front of that, I say, okay, if I take the right steps, I can do it. Also because each one of us, are we somewhere along this path or not? Yes, we are doing at least the first step of taking the mind on the object. And so, this that we are seeing is not with the goal in this moment to give you the instruction, technical instructions, so that each one of you can, in a short time, realize the shamatha state of calm abiding, but it's a first overview to start to understand what are we talking about, to then have aspiration towards that. Then there are many beautiful texts, many very detailed. I made myself a scheme where I took texts from Lama Michel Rinpoche and put them together with the various definitions and so on, to have like some guidelines for these days. That is to say that there is a lot of material and that can be accessed, but first of all we need an overview of what is possible. So now we will stop for lunch, then we will come back, but I just wanted to put this in the context that the idea that I want to give you these days is to allow you to, first of all, have an experience that is suitable for each one. So the minimum thing is to be able to sit correctly, to breathe in a certain way, to help, to calm mental agitation and to bring mind to the present. And that's already a lot to do that, and that's great. But at the same time, to be able to see, okay, I'm at the beginning of a path, what is there at the end? What are the necessary steps to get there? To be able to have that vision.
Adesso ci fermiamo per pranzo.
Now we stop for lunch, and then after that we come back to take back all of that.
Lame kutse rapten chin nam karatin le chokchur gebadang losan tempe drume sasum ki drove munsel takto ne gyur chi kewa kunto yanda lama dang dralme cheki pela longche chin sadan lamge yunten rabzo ne dorje changi kopa nyurtoba sho nimo dele tsindele nime kuyan delek shin ninsen takto delek pe koncho sumki chingi lob koncho sumki ngodrubutsol koncho sumki trashi shum.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all the realizations and to sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Homa honten balame sange rinpoche, kyo balame tamcho rinpoche, dren balame gendo rinpoche, kyamne kuncho sumla chopa. Buon appetito. È una cosa che vi consiglio.
One thing that I advise of, practical thing, if possible, to take, there is like the little card with the path of the calm abiding. We should have it at the shop. I don't know if there is for everyone, but if we have this, there is something that is useful for later to have as a point of reference. Enjoy your lunch, everyone.